Welcome back. I'm Anastasia, and my mission is to build a community of acceptance and authenticity. I needed some adventure buddies for this journey of insight, and I'm glad it's you. You are all welcome here, and I'm grateful that you decided to join me. Today, I'm going to take a moment and reflect on the journey of Insights with Us, talk about what 2026 has in store, and then we are going to talk about what it means to do the deep, vulnerable work that we as humans shy away from. Some people call this shadow work, and it's working with the parts of us that hide in the shadows, who are afraid to be seen. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank my clothing partner, Occupied Mind. Occupied Mind's goal is to create a sanctuary of self-expression. Their belief is simple yet profound. Everyone deserves to feel at home in their own skin. We share that dream, which is why I support them, and my closet is slowly turning into an Occupied Mind showroom. Today, I am wearing the shirt My Demons Won today because we're going to be talking about my demons, and I actually have a shirt that is bitchcraft, like witchcraft, but for the bitches. I'm so excited. I'm waiting for it to come in the mail. So there is a shirt for everyone out there, I promise you. Use code INSIGHTSWITHUS15 at checkout to find a shirt that speaks your mind and bears your soul. That's OCTOPIEDMIND.com, occupiedmind.com. And you can always find the link in my bio on Instagram at Insights With Us Podcast. Be authentically you. We have completed 2 years of Insights With Us, and I have so much gratitude for every single one of you. Gratitude for each of my guests that I have been lucky enough to connect with, and all of my listeners who continue to support me. This started out as a passion project with friends and colleagues who were willing to join me, and it is turning into a real live guest show. We've had guests from all over the world these last 2 years, from all sorts of disciplines and backgrounds. But there is a theme that remains true through most of our stories. Break free of the boxes of who you think you're supposed to be and find your true self. If you stop worrying about what will make others happy and listen to your inner voice, you will find freedom, self-love, and a deeper connection with those around you. We've had guests who have completely broken free and love being their authentic self, guests who are in the messy middle of that process and can see the benefits that they hope to gain, and guests who are just starting to learn what this means and what is possible for them. I have loved this experience, and I can't wait to share this next year's lineup with you. We have more therapists like Brittany Latta, whose episode is already available and started 2026 off for us. She is a trauma therapist who focuses on supporting queer and neurodivergent identities. So if you haven't listened yet, go back, listen to that episode. Love her. Hi, Miss Jules. Jules just came to say hi too for the start of 2026. You're such a good girl. I'm in the middle of a recording right now. Can you go to bed? She's very distracting. It's fine. Real life here, people. Real life. You're also going to hear from Stephanie Sontag, who decided to get out of her comfort zone and create the app and website called Next Therapist. The goal is to help people find therapists who are a better fit and get support sooner. You're also going to meet authors like Renee Fiek, who wrote Cycle Sync Your Business, which is a book written to help those with a monthly hormone cycle show up more authentically and intuitively with their bodies. We have Heather Hendry coming on in the next episode, who wrote the Awfully Hilarious series and is coming back to promote her third book in the series, which is called Pillow Talk, and I'm going to be an author in it. I have my author's copy right here, actually, and I'm very excited about it. We are also going to have more athletes on the podcast, like Ginny McCole, who's going to talk to all of you about being willing to try new things and becoming a ninja warrior and a Guinness World Record keeper in her 60s. She's amazing. I cannot wait for this episode to come out. So all in all, 2026 is going to be exciting for the podcast, but I'm not really sure what 2026 is going to bring all of us. I do know that there are going to be plenty of chances for insight, growth, and learning to sit in the discomfort so that you can figure out what is authentic for you. And that's why I want to focus on that in this episode today. I am so excited that you are here, and I am so excited that I get to share all of this with you for the third year in a row. I've said before, and I will say again, growth happens in the discomfort. So can you invite yourself to show up in the uncomfortable internal spaces that you typically avoid? All of us have at least one voice in our heads that we run away from, distract, or refuse to acknowledge. Today, I want to invite curiosity around the idea of shadow work, which is the work of sitting with that voice in our heads, getting to know our shadow self, our repressed self, and develop a new relationship with it so that we can show up more intentionally in our lives. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." I always use January as the slow beginning of the year, which is why I didn't post a solo video at the beginning of January. I take my time. I move with calm intentions, and I set myself up for the other 11 months. I take this time to get to know what is in the corners of my mind, the shadows, if you will, and identify what needs are not being met and what I might want to prioritize moving forward. This January, for this podcast, I have been sitting with this idea of shadow work. And let's be real, I actually started writing this script months ago, but I kept putting it off because it just didn't feel quite right. And I feel like this is the time for you all to get this episode. So how can you be curious about where you're at in your life journey and what growth you still have left to do? As I just mentioned, one of the biggest themes in this podcast so far, and I'm very proud that it's a theme, is becoming your authentic self. Healing the parts of you who have been taught to show up for others, to people please, to put on a show so that others are happy. And as you heal, begin to actually choose what feels right for you. In theory, this would feel great. It would feel freeing. But when you start this work, you have to constantly come face to face with those pieces of your soul who think that what you're doing is wrong or bad, that others need to be the priority, or that if you show up as yourself, no one will like you or accept you. This work is exhausting. It's anxiety producing. And if you aren't quite sure how to sit in that discomfort, it makes sense that you feel like you're doing something wrong and that your instinct might be to run away, to not try, or to give in to those expectations that others put on you, or that you put on yourself out of fear that others would put the expectation on you. Like, are they actually telling you that's what they want, or are you just trying to read their minds? So it's okay if you run away from the uncomfortable thoughts or feelings that are inside of you. It is a normal reaction to have. All of us have this reaction. And until we learn how to sit in it, we will continue to react in this way because it's needed to survive. And it is the easiest way to navigate it, by avoiding it. One of the most common examples of this is if we have to have a hard conversation with someone, especially if it's someone we love. Even if talking to them is the best answer in the long run and will better your lives moving forward because you talked about it, we always tend to leave it to the last second or avoid it at all costs. It's easier to procrastinate it or never add it to our to-do list than actually sit down and have that hard conversation. We're avoiding that hard conversation with ourselves. And shadow work is deciding to have that conversation. Even though we're not going to like it in the moment, it's going to be better for ourselves in the long run if we actually speak to ourselves and understand what's going on in our heads. I honestly believe that if people learn how to sit in this kind of discomfort, a lot of relational problems would dissipate, or at least resolve easier, and there would be a lot less pain in the world because people would be talking about it instead of running away from it and blaming others. And little soapbox here, you can't really learn from history if you're not willing to stop and look at the pain and violence of those mistakes in history. If it's too uncomfortable to look at, then you're not going to learn from it, and then you're doomed to repeat those mistakes. That is what we're seeing here. People are avoiding the stuff that makes them uncomfortable. Look at that. We are now living what is uncomfortable. This is painful and this sucks, and we're not going to talk about it in detail today because I have mentioned a lot of things about this in the podcast so far, and I want to focus on the internal work. Because if we can do the work for ourselves, then we can show up in that space with others, show them it's okay to do that work, encourage them to do that work. This is going to spread across the world. So sustainable change takes time. Let's make it sustainable. Anyway, back to it. We often like to run away from it and blame others for our pain. And some of us run away from the voice telling us it's okay to be ourselves because we are so used to following society's rules and don't want to risk rejection. Some of us run away from the voice telling us to fit in and be the person others want us to be because maybe we never fit in. So there's a little bit of a fuck you, I do what I want kind of attitude. But it is surrounded by pressure and shame instead of freedom. Like, I'm going to do what I want, whether you like it or not, versus, hey, I'm me. I'm going to do what I want. And I really hope that you do what you want because you get to exist also. Like, there's a big difference there. And some of us run away from both voices and we just shut down and make no choice at all. This decision paralysis can be debilitating because you know what you want and you know the discomfort or judgment that might come from wanting it. There are so many voices within us, all trying to help us solve life's problems. So what happens if you stop running? If you actually pause long enough to listen to what they have to say? What if you start taking steps to be yourself? Even if there is a part of you that is afraid it's wrong. Each of us is different, which means the initial reactions if we stop running will be different. But based on experience, here's my answer. When I first stopped running, there was a lot of heaviness and fear. Those feelings in my body were completely overwhelming and impossible to hold. Imagine a dam that was meant to hold back a river. If you don't open the dam occasionally and let the river flow, the pressure builds behind the wall. And when you do eventually open it, that initial burst of water is powerful. It is overwhelming. The same is true for our feelings and thoughts. But if you open the dam and you sit in that experience, even if it's overwhelming, it won't destroy you. You might cry or panic or hurt. I did. And then eventually the pressure lessens. There is a little more space to look around in that experience and have curiosity for what's going on. And in that space, you can even look at that heaviness and maybe be curious about what that feeling is trying to tell you. Over time, that dam can actually be open the majority of the time because you can handle the flow of your feelings and reactions. And you only need to close it in specific situations. Like, I'm human, I have feelings, I have hard days. And in this podcast, I share vulnerable ideas and examples with you. But while I'm recording, I do have my dam closed. I'm not letting myself sit here in the hurt or the pain and cry so hard that none of you can understand me because I want to share these ideas with you. And then later, if I am holding something heavy, and let's be real, I'm at the start of 2026 right now, I'm definitely holding some heavy stuff. I open that dam once I'm able to, once I'm in a space where I can, and I let those feelings flow. I don't just close it forever and refuse to acknowledge it. So this overwhelm, this anxiety that I felt now that the dam is open, once I survived that initial pressure, I asked myself, what's in this? What can I learn when I stop trying to cover it up? What can I be curious about? I've said in previous episodes that big out of proportion reactions is always a great space to pause and be curious. Like, why am I screaming at my loved one? Why am I crying uncontrollably? Why am I having this panic attack? Maybe we don't understand the why, but it can be used as a cue for something else is going on here. This can also be a cue that there is a shadow self at work here. And if we stop trying to run away from it or hide from it or control it, maybe we can actually have some curiosity. So, cues that your shadow self is present, like I said, could be angry outbursts or jealousy or feeling judgmental or fearing judgment, being defensive, being stubborn, being anxious or full of panic. Any of these really intense experiences that we'd want to run away from, there's something in that. So for me, my shadow self showed up in anxiety, defensiveness, and fear of judgment. I realized that I grew up trying my best to never have needs, to never be witnessed. I just walked through life trying to take care of everyone else. And I wasn't explicitly told that I wasn't allowed to have needs, but there was a pattern where if my need contradicted that of someone else, my need was often unintentionally disregarded. This pattern strengthened over time, and then I was the one disregarding my own needs. No one even realized what was happening. So of course I had anxiety. I was never allowed to say what I wanted. Whenever I had a need, I would fall apart in a panic because it meant I was failing. Being vulnerable and showing these parts of myself, trying to stand up for my needs, felt impossible because it meant I was doing something wrong. I wasn't supposed to ask for help or have an opinion that didn't match others. So I always kept it hidden and never told anyone what was going on. Then I became a therapist, and I tried to help others believe it was okay to show these parts of themselves, that they could be safe. But I still never wanted to show my shadows to the people in my life. I kept trying to be perfect, and it was breaking me. My panic attacks were getting worse, my body was breaking down, and my chronic pain was becoming unmanageable. Trying to please others and show up in a way where I didn't need anything was killing me, and I couldn't do it anymore. That's when I started to speak my truth. First, just to myself. When I was quiet, alone in a room by myself, I was finally letting it exist, everything that was wrong and what all my needs were. Then I started talking to a trusted friend who was able to show up for me. Shout out to Sadie, who is a regular on this podcast, and we are planning fun projects for 2026, so stay tuned. I also went to therapy and let someone else show me it was okay to exist and have needs. I became a big believer in showing my humanity to the world. And in my work as a therapist, I would let my clients see that I was a real person who could normalize their fears because I had fears too. This led to the realization that while I've come a long way in this work, and I have been showing up more and more as myself, I would still revert back to the old versions around anyone who knew the old me. I would shut down, mentally run away, and pretend I was someone I wasn't in an attempt to rock the boat. In an attempt to not rock the boat, rather. This was my next growth point. How can I start setting boundaries and showing up as myself around those who are used to me being a certain way? Can I stop locking away my feelings and my needs, even if it confuses my loved ones because they're not used to me being like that? This was the goal, but how do I get there? It's not just, ooh, I'm going to show up differently now. That's not how it works. So the next thing I did was to start getting to know the parts of myself that I would revert back to whenever I was in situations that reminded me of my past. I did the shadow work. There are 2 parts that I'm willing to share with you today. There are more, but I'm still building relationships with them, and they are not ready for me to talk about them yet, especially on a podcast with tons of listeners. So the first part is my feral cat. We've talked about him in the past. when I first introduced parts work to all of you. And this is the part of me that gets really overwhelmed when multiple people try to tell me what to do, often with really good intentions, but trying to hear my own voice when I have several other voices in my head is challenging. I get overstimulated and my feral cat comes out and shuts down. He is the part of me that gets irritable and snaps at the people I care about because he feels like no one is listening to me or trying to understand what my needs are. And instead of advocating for those needs, my feral cat will just push everyone away and hide until they've stopped trying to tell me what to do. And then he comes out of hiding and handles the situation. The other part of me that shows up, I call my empty quarter. The empty quarter in the world is the largest sand desert, and it's in the Arabian Peninsula. And we used to visit and camp there when I was a child. You could get to the top of the tallest dune, which would take hours, look around, and there would be nothing as far as you could see. My empty quarter shows up just like that in my mind. And my empty quarter shows up when I've taken on too much and I'm not setting boundaries. And when I just say yes to everyone and am taking care of everything and never get a break for myself. My empty quarter is a vast desert where nothing can find me. It just like blankets over my mind. And parts of me try to find me, like my perfectionist or my people pleaser. But when my empty quarter shows up, it hides me from those parts that are putting expectations on how I show up. My empty quarter is strong dissociation. So once I understood who these voices were inside of me and how they were trying to help with these old patterns, not trying to ruin me, not trying to make things worse, they are trying to help, I then started trying to work with them to show up differently. So my feral cat shows up when he feels like he needs to stand up for me, say no to everyone, and refuse to participate. He is more angry, more outspoken, and ready to run at a moment's notice. My empty quarter is the protector who helps me numb, dissociate, the part of me that recognizes no one's listening to me, and it's easier to just check out and wait for it to pass than to try and engage and hope for different results. Both of these parts of me are helpful, and I deeply appreciate what they do for me, and they definitely do have a time and place, but I don't want them to always be in charge, especially if I'd like to react differently than how they're used to reacting. So as I do this work, when I try to set a boundary or show up in a more authentic way, name my needs, one or both of these parts would show up and freak out. In the past, this freak out would make me change my mind, and I'd revert back to my old behavior. Oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. I'm not supposed to have needs. I'll just stop. But now the difference is I'm trying to let them freak out while I still hold strong on my choice. These reactions within me don't mean I have to change how I show up in the world. It means that I have to change how I show up within myself. I'm not doing something wrong. I'm doing something different. I want to repeat that. These reactions within you don't mean you have to change how you show up in the world. It means you have to change how you show up within yourself. You might not be doing something wrong. You might just be doing something different. Now, of course, there's always exceptions to that rule. There is a lot of pain and violence in the world right now because people are avoiding that voice in their heads. So slow down and think about the person you really want to be. Do you care about kindness and love your neighbor and acceptance? And do you want to build a better world? Do you want to lead with love, or do you want to lead with fear? So if you are showing up in a violent way or a way that goes against your morals, well, then you might want to change how you're showing up in the world. But my guess is that is coming from an easy reaction or an easy behavior versus doing the hard thing and actually looking at what's going on within you. So pay attention to what's happening within you and then do the authentic thing. So for example, with me and what's going on, gesture wildly at everything right now, I'm feeling a lot of fear and anger and heartbreak. But that fear and anger and heartbreak isn't going to make me show up less. I am not going to go and hide because I am scared. I'm going to keep showing up. I am recording this episode with all of that in mind because I don't want to hide this. I want to name shitty things are happening right now. And it's okay to be afraid, but you are not alone. You are not alone. And it is worth the fight. All of this is worth the fight. Everybody being able to show up as their authentic selves is worth the fight. So I am fighting in every way that I know how. I hope you choose to do the same. Because you're not doing something wrong if that fear shows up. You're just doing something different. And I'm so proud of you, and you should be so proud of yourselves if you're doing something different and not just hiding. I learned that it is a lot easier to show up in a new way with new boundaries with people in your life who don't know you. Building new patterns with people who have a strong foundation in the old pattern can feel impossible, especially if there's conflict there. It can often lead to hurt, miscommunications, even loved ones feeling attacked because suddenly you're saying, hey, I get that's what you need, but actually I need something different. And I usually never tell you that, so I get that this is freaking you out, but you not hearing me hurts. And I want to be able to talk to you about that in our relationship. Yeah, it freaks people out when you change, especially if they aren't on the journey that you're on. This is an experience with anyone who tries to heal or tries to set boundaries. It becomes obvious who is growing with you and who isn't, or if both of you are growing, that you're in different parts of the journey. And if someone isn't willing to find the curiosity and grow with you, to listen to those boundaries when you say no, this can lead to a lot of hurt feelings because they think you're blaming them or attacking them instead of the truth. You're just setting boundaries with them, maybe for the first time in your life. I help someone through this at least once a month, and I have navigated it myself several times over the course of my adult life. This is such a common interaction. It is not unique. When you change, when you suddenly start saying, hey, that actually doesn't go with what I need, people freak out. And for those of us on the healing journey, or who are farther along in the journey, you also need to remember that you cannot convince someone to do the work if they don't want to, even if it breaks your heart that they won't do that work. You have to accept them for who they are and what they are willing to do. But you can still set boundaries with them, and you're allowed to be upset when they don't listen or respect your boundaries. It is a complicated line to walk, but it's an important one. You're allowed to have your feelings and wish they could see it the way you're able to, but you can't make them. You need to find acceptance around that if you want to keep that person in your life. So let me give you an example. When I was first moving in with my partner, there was a lot of discussion around how quickly I was supposed to move out of my old place. There was no timeline for me, and I wasn't in a rush. So for the first time in my life, I decided not to rush, and I slowly moved stuff over and let myself actually transition into my new space. Now, some of my loved ones thought I was crazy and tried to push me to move at a faster pace, a pace that made sense in their heads because that's how I always moved. And I had to regularly set a boundary and try to remind them of my timeline and my plan. This led to some conflict because, again, that's really common because I wasn't just going with the flow like I always did in the past. My feral cat came out and panicked and freaked out, and I almost gave in and panic moved like they wanted, just to make them happy. Let's just get it over with. But I didn't want to, though. I wanted to move slowly. I didn't want to feel panicked. So catch-22, I'm going to feel panicked either way. But I let myself freak out. I let my feral cat panic. and reminded myself and my support system that there actually is no rush, that I'm not running behind. I am, in fact, right on time, and I will be completely moved out and into my new place on the date that I told them I would be. And you know what? I did. My nervous system likes moving slowly, with several opportunities to readjust and process the new information. So the fact that I could advocate for myself and make this happen, it is my absolute favorite way to move. And looking back, I'm really glad I didn't revert to my old self, that I stayed true to what was authentic for me. Even so, I had some people in my life who spent the whole time arguing with me, acting upset, and even refused to talk to me for some of it, because I didn't just agree with them and change my plan to make them feel better. It's hard work balancing this. So when you slow down and you look into your shadows, how can you let the flood of emotions exist long enough to know where those emotions are coming from? I was going to be panicked either way. I was either going to move really fast and be really anxious about how quickly I was moving, or I was going to move slowly in the way that I thought would be better for me, but then be panicked about what everybody thought about what I was doing. Panic either way. So how can you learn to be curious if the reaction is coming from your authentic self, or if your anxiety is in charge? If it is coming from a desire to control, to fix, to distract from something, or to just make other people happy, there's a good chance that it's coming from your anxiety, that it isn't coming from your authentic self. So how can you recognize this and intentionally choose a different way to show up? How can you do the hard and uncomfortable thing even as everyone around you is trying to convince you to go back to the old way? The pattern that feels safe but might not be authentic. It's a hard one, and it is not easy. That's why therapy exists. That's why I went to therapy, so that I could have somebody go, hey, but what's right for you? This work, as hard as it might be, is possible. And I hope you find the courage and the curiosity to do it, because when I started to shine a light on the parts of me who have been hidden, even though there was a lot of fear and tears and grief, I also found self-love and compassion and trust and a new appreciation for who I am and how I show up in this world. So I want to end with some questions that you can ask yourself to begin fostering curiosity with your shadow self. Take your time with this. Pause as needed, maybe journal about it, but above all, remember that there is no right or wrong answer. We are just noticing what your voice in your head is saying. And once you can hear that voice, then you can decide if the thoughts are true for you or not. If you are listening in a place where you can't pause or think about each question, just notice that initial thought that pops into your head. And maybe you save this episode and return to it at another time if you want to dive deeper into what that voice in your head is saying. So with that, let me run through some questions. Maybe one will pique your curiosity. What emotion do you try to avoid feeling the most? How do you react when you feel this emotion? Is your inner voice kind or critical? What kinds of things does it say to you? What are the first signs your mental health is dipping? How do you think people see you? What is your reaction to this idea? When are you most judgmental? If you catch yourself feeling anxious or overthinking, what usually triggers this? What are those anxious thoughts saying? What are your core values? What does freedom mean to you? Who do you struggle to deal with in your life? What is it about them that makes it hard? Do they have qualities or attributes that you find difficult to accept? Who do you enjoy spending time with in your life? What is it about them that makes it enjoyable? What qualities or attributes do they possess? And if you're feeling especially curious, ask yourself, are there any painful memories from my past that are still affecting me to this day? How do they affect me? Think present moment on that one. Don't just get stuck in the past. That's a hard one. It's a hard one. That's why it's only if you're feeling extra saucy. Maybe you go there. And if these questions triggered something big in you, remember, therapists are out there for a reason. Our job as therapists, I'm not in therapist mode right now, but therapists are there to help you hold space for that hurt, help witness you, and help you find your authentic self through that space so that that anxiety and that pain and those memories aren't in charge of your life anymore. And there's a lot more to it, but that's how therapy helps in this context. Doing this work means learning to trust in your ability to sit in that discomfort, learning to let it be okay if these pieces of yourself react to a trigger, and noticing when that reaction is necessary, like feeling hurt by what's happening in the world, or if it may be due to something unresolved in your past, like getting angry at someone for saying something that might not have been meant negatively, but you took it the wrong way because of how you've been treated in the past. We all do this, I promise. That's why it's an example that I use. So I want you to be curious and notice what this episode brings up for you. Notice the voice in your head that you usually run away from. And if you can, maybe try to get to know it. Hopefully, something we talked about today resonated with you. If it did, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. If you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at Insights With Us Podcast, or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe. You can find video episodes on Substack or YouTube, and you can support me, Anastasia Soroka, on buymeacoffee.com. You can find digital downloads on my website, happymindwellness.com. Thank you for being my adventure buddy. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you for creating insight with us.